Before I drowned, I was hearing my heart beating very loud. It was like a drum, like boom, 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 boom. The call was so intense that it was just this. And from there, it was the realization why I cannot breathe. The moment I was in this state of absolute horror, in just a blink like that, I entered into the space of calmness and tranquility and just it was just this space of absolute peace. My path of realizing who I am started since I was very little. And this all, I guess, started to happen when I had experience in which I drowned and I had what is known as near death experience. What happened is that back then I was born in Bogota, Colombia. I lived there with my parents, my sisters, and my parents will go to work and they will leave us at the care of a maid. I was just very little, close to 3 years old. And when my parents were not around, this lady really didn't care much about what we were doing. And then one morning they left, and my oldest sister, who was close to 4, and I decided, let's go play in the patio. She's not watching. So we went there, and in the patio, there was a big tank. And the purpose of this tank was to collect water for hand washing clothes because back then we didn't have a washing machine. And then, but this tank was big, it held about 900 gallons of water. So we just, hey, not thinking about anything. We just saw a couple of balls and decided, "Oh, let's play cash across the tank." It was a tank entirely made of cement. It had a roof. It was 6 in the morning. I was leaning very precariously in this tank. And she threw the ball. She didn't apply enough force. The ball fell on the water. It was floating. And I thought, oh, I can grab it. And I leaned forward. And when I leaned forward and touched the ball, it rolled. And then I fell in the tank. So the last thing I saw with my eyes open was the darkness of the space. And yeah, it was the sense of entering into darkness. Imagine the first feeling was this water is frigid cold. Like my breath was taken, like the cold was so intense that it was just this. And from there, it was the realization why I cannot breathe. I never had been under the water. We didn't have a bathtub. I never been in a pool. So for me, it was this horror of what is going on, why I cannot breathe. So imagine the terror I experienced at this moment. And the magic happened. The moment I was in this state of absolute horror, in just a blink like that, I entered into the space of calmness and tranquility and just it was just this space of absolute peace. And then when the scene, something started to happen, was the first thing I saw was light. So imagine the sense, like now that I am peaceful and now I am like, there is light. And the light was like the light of a candle that was coming from below. And it was this soothing, calming light, but at the same time, it was strong enough to illuminate my whole watery surrounding. And the fact that before I died or I drowned, I was hearing my heart beating very loud. And I imagine the terror, and I could hear it in my head. It was like a drum, like boom, 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 boom. And it was suddenly silence. All the noise was gone. And I experienced this profound, profound silence. We can even describe it nowadays, now that I have more words to talk about all these, as like stillness, that peace. And that silence, the other way I name it is silence behind the silence, was so profound that I craved that silence for the rest of my life. So what happened next is, now that I am in the light, I am in this peaceful silence, when I started to see bubbles. And the bubbles were surrounded by light. And imagine, it's like, wow, this is so cool. And it's when I saw these bubbles that I started to just chase them. And when I'm chasing the bubbles, I turn around and I saw my body. And my body was floating there in the water with the eyes open. The body didn't have life. You know, when we said that the eyes are the expression of the soul, the heart, when I saw that face, it was like an empty shell. When I was looking at the body, it's important to mention that I was born as a very sick child. For the first 3 years of my life, almost 3 years, I was always unwell. I didn't even know what well being was. I was always sick. And then now I am in the state of absolute well being. So imagine what I was experiencing was like, what? No, I'm not going back to that sick body. And at that moment, I had the clarity that I could make that decision, that I don't want to go back there. And I turned around and I left the body behind. And as I turned around and left the body behind, I started to see flowers. And the flowers were blooming from nowhere. And it was this majestic feeling of, this is incredible. And then even the sense of dimension changed when I was now picked up by the flowers. Imagine how big a flower has to be to pick you up. And then I'm picked up by flowers and I was being carried. And I was in the state of complete relaxation, complete bliss. And is when I put the analogy that is like going back to the womb, where you don't have to do anything. You're just being carried, you're just being done. And at that moment, something incredible happened. In just a blink, I appear in the maid's room. And I'm floating above her bed. She's just there listening to soap operas in the radio, not even knowing at all what is happening. And then I'm floating above her and I'm like, oh, that's Maria. Nothing with Maria. And then after that, now in another flash like that, I appear in my mom's path. What I mean with this is that she didn't have a car, she was walking, and she was almost close to her bus stop. And then now, like with Maria, I'm floating above her. And I think this is the part that, one, validates the experience, and two, I think blows everybody's minds away. And is the moment I saw my mom, I said, oh, that's mom. My mom stopped. She fell and she knew that something was happening at home with one of her babies, and she didn't even hesitate. I like to mention something because at that moment my mom had got a new job. And what is that we humans usually would do? Oh no, I have to, I mean, like, really have to go to my new job. You will not listen to that intuition because the call of responsibility with your job probably is higher. But she said that, yeah, that day she even she felt it, she heard it. She's like, it was so compelling that it was a pull, that it was not even that she could do anything else. And she turned around and she started to run back home. And then I'm looking at my mom and I'm like, oh, wait, I wonder why she's running. And then at that moment, I change my view, and at the horizon, I see a dog, and I adore animals. So the moment I see this dog, I forgot about my mom, and I am with the dog. And then the moment I'm with the dog, I'm like, wow, what just happened? Then I saw a park, and the moment I feel the desire of being in the park, I am in the park. So it's like now time and space as we know it had completely changed, and I could be anywhere at any time just by that simple desire. And then I started to play a game. This is so much fun. I'm playing this game of going places. And then this is when another incredible thing happened, and is in another jump, in another flash. Everything in this experience was like that. So in another flash, I am in a realm that is made of pure, bright, intense, shiny light. And when I am in this realm is when I felt for the first time. Again, it was that feeling that when we talk about feeling before seeing, it was the feeling of I am home. I am home. Yeah, the first thing I perceived was this light, but it came immediately with the sense like I am back home. And the sense of home, you feel welcome, embraced, it feels so good. And this is the moment when something also incredible happened. Despite that I had seen my body suspended in the water, I did not have the realization that that was not me. I was still, of course, the mind and the body attached. And at this moment is when I realized I am not that. I am not that. I'm not that body. I'm not that persona. And I realized myself as a being of light. And at that moment, it was like I started to feel the sense of dissolving, connecting with everything. I just completely detached, and I experienced what I call nothingness. And some people may say, that nothingness seems scary. What do you mean nothing? And I said, yeah, it was that sense of nothing, absolutely nothing I could describe or give a name or give texture or color or form or meaning. Or and when I say this to give an analogy, somebody shared this with me and I thought it was an incredible analogy. Imagine that all you knew about yourself was a little box in the middle of a stadium. And that's what you thought you were, that little box. And suddenly that box opens and you realize, it's nothing because it's nothing I thought I was, but it's wholeness because it turns in the totality of everything. And at that moment, it was that sense of complete interconnection, knowing that you're not a separate entity in that box, you are that totality. You're connected with everything. And it was that sense of expansion and that sense of is you lack words. I think all of us that have had these experiences, like you don't know how to explain that. And this was all coming from the center. It was like expansion. And I think the only words I could say is a state of pure consciousness and absolute presence. When I am in this state of being, my mom finally arrives home. And this is amazing because we live in a pretty big house, but she knew exactly where to go. And she could, if she would have decided go to another room, of course the body cannot hold that much. But one thing that saved my body was that the water was frigid cold. So my mom ran to the patio and right there where my sister was still there, and she was trying to get me out of the tank herself. So when my mom entered the patio, she looked at my sister, and my sister said, "Ingrid is there and I cannot get her." My mom jumped in the tank. She got me out. She said that I was like a raggedy doll. No pulse, no breathing, completely pale, blue nails, leaves. And then my mom, this is everything I just keep saying, this is incredible, but it's like that because there's all these synchronicities in life also that were playing their part. And is that my mom worked with children, and she had received some training to do CPR for children. So my mom knew exactly. She didn't know that training. Maybe she, I don't know what she would have done, but at that moment she started to do anything she knew to revive me. And I was so disconnected from this body that I did not feel absolutely anything. Nothing she was doing. The only thing that I felt is that suddenly I felt that I had jumped from the tallest building in the world, and there was nothing I could do to stop this. And I felt the sense that I was falling, like, no. It was a sense of like vacuum. And my reaction to that was like, no, I didn't want to come back. And I knew I was back in the body when all the feelings of coldness and that lack, the expansion feeling I was having. Imagine getting reduced to like, whoop, no, being back in the box. And I just felt the sense of being very angry and not wanting to be here. I was pretty angry, and I refused to eat. I refused to be here. I didn't even want to be touched, connected with anyone. And when I was looking at my parents, what happened is I came back with an awareness I didn't have before. And when people say, but before you were so little, guess what? Because it's not about the age in your physical body right now, it's about the eternal existence of your soul. So I guess in my case, I meant to remember faster. Another thing that happened that I think is important to mention, when I came back from my uh, childhood near death experience, I had abilities. And that's another thing that validated the experience. And it was, imagine I was about to be just 3 years old. And no longer after I came back, I could read, I could write, I could put together complex puzzles, I could resolve mathematical problems, I could paint. And it was all there. And for me, was the sense, and in school, it was incredible. I was brilliant because it was the sense I don't have to learn anything. I'm just remembering. Starting to remember who I was. So when now I look at my parents, I look at my body, first I am seeing my parents, and I had that clarity. They're not just my parents. I felt them as my equal because I had experienced a state of oneness, and I became very rebellious. Why do I have to listen to you? The other thing, I look at myself and I said, I'm not this child. I am not this child. So imagine how hard it had to be, because I now am this childlike body, but in my inner, I don't feel that way. So I never felt like a child again. And when I would look at other children, I would be like, what is happening to that people? They don't know anything. So I think that what saved me and saved my parents was that I started to see what I called and keep calling until today beings of light. And this is the other thing, when people ask me, how can you remember? And I said, one, because I already mentioned all the contrast, all the trauma, everything that happened. But two, because for me, the experience never ended. After my near death, I started to have near death out of body experiences. Then I started to have the connection with the beings of light, and it continued. It's like for me the door never closed. And later in my life, the beings of light said to me, Ingrid, because I kept repeating that sentence, and they said, of course the door never closed, because guess what? There are no doors. What we call the kingdom of heaven, God, source, the Father, the Creator, consciousness is here for all of us. Always is what we are. But due to conditioning and due to experiences and due to our family burdens, whatever it is, we close the door. I was in, I guess I call it the spiritual eyes, because I was in, I will go to sleep and I will go to that state in which I will go back to that realm of the light. And it to go there, it was at the beginning was pretty dramatic. I will go to sense, it was the sense of accelerating, and I have experienced speeds like really fast and very slow speeds, movements that I have never experienced in my human experience. I've seen colors that I have never describe a color you've never seen here is impossible. So it's just incredible, because I have seen all these colors, movements, frequencies, all kind of stuff, that sounds that actually for the human mind can be very scary. But because I will go back to the realm of the light, that was the reward. In one of these journeys is like, imagine at night when you go outside and you see all the stars. Imagine seeing that, but everything is light, and I was seeing stars like figures shining in all different colors to the infinite. So this was absolutely majestic. And I would just be mesmerized. At the beginning, I didn't know what it was. I was just, because also in the pureness of the mind, now when we're adults, we grow, we need to give name to everything. And this has to be this, and this has to be described this way. At that moment, with the pure mind of a child, I didn't need all these descriptions. I was just experiencing it. And in another one of these journeys, one of these beings that was shining in like golden light shaped itself into a human form. And is when I said, you are a being of light, of a being of light. I am a now 3-year old. This is a being made of light. So the being touched me, and I'm like, I realized we are the same. And then I woke up, but I imagine those days I was sleeping a lot because I wanted to be in this. But since again, look at how perfect everything is. Since I was a child, oh, a child is sleeping a lot. That's good. We don't have to. The new maid didn't have to pay attention to this child that's sleeping a lot. But of course, I could not be the child that slept forever. So balance was needed. And that balance came in which one day I'm taking a shower, all relaxed in the shower, and then a light blue, intense blue light shone in the bathroom. And then I'm like, now the beings of light are here. And that was a very important moment, Lauren, in my life, because, like I said to you, up to this point, I was very angry. I didn't want to talk to anyone, play with my sisters. I was rebellious, and I wanted to be there. And the moment I started to see the beings of light here, imagine, was like, now they are here. Now they are here. So that, to me, that was the sense of like, now I can be home here. So, and that was a very important teaching that I took me many years to understand, but later was revealed to me in the sense that was the understanding that home is not a place, is a state of being. And I started to eat and play with my sisters and experience Ingrid more in like, oh yes, this is my human experience. But something else happened. I was still very detached from my name and from my persona. And then when they would call me Ingrid, I would just feel, "Ay." And I would look at myself in the mirror and say, my mom, you have to understand this is not me. She didn't even know what I was talking about. And I didn't have the words to explain, but I was like, this is not me. This is not my name. And then I always kept saying, that's not my name. And then the maid called me one night for dinner and she's like, Ingrid, time for dinner, time for dinner. I'm like, ignore, ignore. And I would get aggravated. And then she came and she's like, we're calling you for dinner. Then I said, stop calling me, because she said, Ingrid, we're calling you. And I said, stop calling me like that. That's not my name. Imagine that. Is like, oh, Lord. So she said, then how should I call you? What is your name? And I turned and I said, I do not need one. And I was throwing my tantrum crying when I heard this voice. But again, you hear, but it's the hearing that comes with profound feeling. And I call it the inner senses. And it's when I heard the voice that said, it's going to take time for them to understand that names are not needed in the realm of the light. And they say, like, you already know. So for me, it was like, I'm not crazy. I'm not crazy. And of course, I want to make clear to people that later, of course, I understood that our name is important. We need a name in our human experience. Names are beautiful, they carry frequency, but it was also knowing that in the pureness of our being, we do not need names. This other thing they said to me, your experience, the experience that you had, and the experience that you are going to have, someday in the future you will share with others when you're ready and when they are ready. And they say you will never be alone, but don't talk to others about this because they're not going to understand. So imagine a child 5 years old, 4 years old, listening that others cannot understand this and realizing it too pretty quick, because anytime I talk to anybody, it was like, this child is dreaming, especially we do it with children. She's has this big imagination, whatever, and then nobody really understood or believed or whatever was. But not, it was not the case with everybody, because they said there will be people in your path to guide you and to teach you and to validate you. And it was my mom and my grandmother, my father. When I asked them, being so I was a child, and I said, why me? Why this is happening to me? And I would cry because no one imagined, no one understood. I felt isolated. I felt alone. And it was, I would just say, where is the manual? Why is this happening to me? And then they said, the first answer, they said, because you are special. And I said, what do you mean when you say that I am special? And the answer is absolutely beautiful. What they said to me, they say, everybody is special, but not everybody knows it yet. And you are starting to know it. So but it will take time, and you will bring that to others so they can also start remembering who they are. It's not about near dead. It's about learning to live. Near life experience. How do I live my life to the fullest? How I live every moment, and I take this human experience as my opportunity to know myself deeper, to know you, to know everyone deeper, to connect deeper, to love deeper, to smile deeper, to just have a blast. Even is hard, but if it wasn't hard, it would be boring. it's hard and it's easy. So it's play the game of life and enjoy it as much as you can.